why they called this the most over-engineered Mercedes in the whole world, why I bought it, and how I'm going to prep it in order to drive across the Moroccan desert. All of that and more in this video. So there we are, my beautiful W124 from 1990. Gosh, where are we going to start with this? I think, first of all, let's just have a look at the exterior of the car, because this is the as-is state in which I bought it. It's a 1990 W124, the successor to the 123, which was a phenomenal car. But the big change is the fact that this one started having angular shapes, and the design, we have to say, is just absolutely incredible. It's timeless in a sense. I think it ran out of familiarity at the time by the late 1990s or maybe even the early 2000s. But as of late, it's just gained so much more popularity because of the shape, because of what Mercedes had done, and because of the fact that this was such an over-engineered car. Oh gosh. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to behold. And I remember a friend of mine's father, who was a doctor in the early 2000s, had one of these, and it was kind of like the status symbol. It was such an elegant car to own. The doctors would have it, the dentists, the lawyers, they would have these cars. And I still have the original contract of the first owner that bought it for 52,000 Deutschmark. Now that, if it would be the equivalent of euro nowadays, is probably the best part of about 25,000 euro for a car that I picked up for just over 3,500 euro. Now, the idea with this video, we've got a couple of things to talk about. One of it is the car per se. The other one is what I mentioned at the beginning, wanting to turn this into an off-road version with which I'm going to cross the Saharan desert in Morocco. That is such a crazy idea to do in an E-Class Mercedes. But if any car, then this one. And then, is what we'll do now, is just walk around, and I want to take you through the process of, for example, if you're thinking of buying one of these, what do you need to look out for? Where are the weak spots on these cars? What are the things that I have learned that I wish I had known before? And so on and so forth. So we'll start first of all with, in case you want to buy one of these, you might just want to consider the rust factor. Now, Mercedes spent copious amounts of effort into making this car very rust resistant. However, rust seems to be quite the bugger because it does just come through and does its thing. And with these cars, most of the time, you need to have a look round about here, and the wheel arches on the inside, that's where you could have some rust problems. And then also in the front, these guys are very prone to rust. And also this area, for some reason, on the inside, they also a little bit prone to rust. A very other familiar spot, probably one of the first things you want to do is you want to take these parts off here and actually have a look inside there to see how that actually looks like. If that's rusted and terrible, then obviously maybe it's not the best idea. And what you need to do as well is you need to get the car up on a lift and see what it looks like where the rear suspension actually mounts onto the body. That's above there, and at the back, I can't show you that now. But that also is an area that often is very prone to rust. And we've got areas around the window. Now you can see something's been done here already. As we said, the car is in an as-bought condition. Something's been done over here. This strip, funny enough, doesn't belong here, because one of the trademarks of the E-Class of that era was the fact that they had a channel. If you look here, you can see there is some sort of a channel which, if the water runs towards the back, it actually slips into the channel and then gets flown down here and doesn't obstruct your view through the window. Now, towards the rear, often have little rust issues around here as well in the back. But I mean, if you're going to buy one of these cars, you're going to just have to check it out thoroughly for rust issues. make sure you get something solid. As I said, I paid 3,650 euro for this car, which is an incredible amount of value for money, to be honest. And it's in an okay condition. These guys have been worked on. This is not the 100% original shape from the standard version, I've been told, and you can also feel on the inside that the inner rim of this fender isn't, or this wheel arch rather, isn't really the authentic original one. You want to just check out stuff like that as well. And then, for example, on the interior, for rust over there and at the bottom of the doors, kind of looks okay for this one. Now, as we said, 3,500, that's a really good price for, let's say, the middle condition of what you can pay for these cars. If you want to have one that's a lot nicer, then, well, you're gonna have to spend between, let's say, from about 4,500, 5,000 upwards to about 10. North of 10, you're gonna get really fantastic examples. And underneath 3,500 is gonna be interesting. Let's pop the hood very quickly, show you the engine. Now, there are a plethora of engines available for this car. This here is the infamous 2.3 litre 4-cylinder. Fantastic engine. This is the 1990 model, which means that it's actually the pre-facelift. Now, the facelift, you will see that these lights is they're not orange anymore, they are see-through. That's how you recognize it very, very quickly. And then on the interior, they've changed a couple of things. You basically get things like airbags and air conditioning and so on and so forth. Also, the engine upgrades in those models, they've been changed, so you have greater horsepower. As a matter of fact, the 2-litre version then puts out the same power as this 2.3-litre version. But in this pre-facelift models, you had the entry-level petrol engines. That's the 2-litre petrol, the 2.3-litre petrol, and then they swapped over to the 6-cylinders, the 260E and then the 300E. And then you did get some bigger ones, the 400, the 500. But that's in an area where it's so crazy to get to. This is basically the bread and butter that we're going to be dealing with mostly. From the diesels, you had a 200 diesel, which really is the engine. I think it's the mixture of being so vulnerable because it's so slow and doesn't have a lot of power. You know, it's 72 horsepower, I think, but it just lasts forever. Then you've got a 2.5 litre 5-cylinder diesel, and then you have the 3-litre diesel. I think there was at some stage a 3-litre turbo diesel, but let's stick with this one, the 2.3 litre 4-cylinder. This engine develops about 132 or 136 horsepower, and it's mated with a 4-speed or a 5-speed manual gearbox or a 4-speed automatic gearbox. Now, I think a couple of things just to mention what I've learned when I owned this car is one of the things is very interesting. This little channel over there, that's for oil that presses out from next to your cap and flows down there. It's not a rarity. It does happen. There's quite a bit of pressure inside here, but on the other hand, it's not a terrible thing either. So don't stress about that. Then these pipes over here, they often tend to crumble. You might want to just check that channel. Goes underneath the air intake, the filter, and it's basically for the compression that builds up here that then gets dispersed, and some of it runs back into the intake actually. Then the other thing you want to do is the water reservoir. These ones with the sensor over here, after 30, 35 years, and I mean, it's not very far from the outlet manifold, you might want to think of changing this just because it can get a little bit brittle. And when you do, be sure to check out this little clip over here, because this bugger just tends to break, funny enough, this little circlip. Other than that, it's a very, very solid car. What you do want to check out as well is your Domlage. I don't know what they call this in English at the moment, but these guys tend to get a little bit brittle as well. And this one is, I'm going to have to change that. This car did receive quite a couple of new components, but I think we'll get more into the technical side once we actually start working on the car. let's get to the interior. Isn't this just one of the most beautiful trademarks ever on a car? This and probably the Emily, some of my favorite. Just look at how they've built this car. So solid, big, strong lights. The angles on this car, back in the day, it was one of the most efficient, or the very much more efficient larger sedans in the late 80s because of the shape of the car. It was very aerodynamic, had very little drag, aided fuel consumption tremendously back in an era where people didn't really bother that much, I think, with the fuel consumption, as opposed to how little cars actually use today, isn't it? And also the fact that it was streamlined, so it would just sit there and purr at 180,000 exactly, 180 kilometers per hour on the Autobahn, and would be smooth and just cruise along. Tremendous, even for an engine with 2.3 liter capacity. You have the various kind of rims, the 2, 4, 6, 8 spoke. Then you've got the Gullideckel, like the drain lid ones as well, and obviously steel with those rounded caps, which could look very, very classy, very beautiful. These tires are going to get changed, and perhaps you're asking, well, what the heck did you want to do with this car in Morocco? What's the story with that? Well, perhaps we'll talk about that more once we actually take the car for a drive. But very briefly, there's a rally called Off the Beaten Track, and they are driving straight down from Munich all the way to Spain. We getting together there, and then we're traveling on the roads less traveled, mostly gravel, mostly mountain passes and off-road, and then heading over and entering Morocco. And then there's a whole route, amazing route that they're going to take, and they're going to take us right through Morocco, through the desert. I've just seen pictures. We're going to be driving fabulously crazy roads in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And I think all the more special to do it in a car like this. There are already so many of these driving around in Morocco where literally half the car has been rusted away or replaced by something else, and they just go and go and go and go. So I gave in the routes and I said to ChatGPT, which car would you recommend? It said, if you don't take a Mercedes, you are freaking crazy. So there we go. That and the love story that's unfolded since then, we'll talk about when we take it for a drive. Because I think we need to experience a car that's 35 years old, that's done 357,000 kilometers. That is worth an applause, don't you agree? And still looks as timeless and beautiful and gorgeous as it does over here. All right, without further ado, also I've got my boot full of stuff. I don't want to embarrass myself by showing you just how much stuff is in there. But when you do get a car like this, make sure you lift up all the carpets and stuff, and then have a look underneath there if there aren't some moisture pockets and things that have just gotten really moldy and all that. But before we carry on, let's actually get into the interior of the car. Now, we've got to get to this. The sound that these doors make when you close them. Check that out. Now, do you know that the components in that door, Mercedes tested them for 100,000 cycles. 100,000 cycles, not to determine that they'll break after that, but just to make sure that at least 100,000 cycles they'll do. I don't know how much you guys drive, but if you would drive every single day, get into your car and out, in and out, 10 times a day, every single day, you would still be able to drive this car for about 30 years without any problems. Because then only that cycle would be depleted. But of course, they let it go into production after finding out that after 100,000 cycles, it's still working perfectly. That's incredible. Also, another thing to notice is the mirrors, how they are asymmetrical. Can you guys see it from here? They're asymmetrical. This one's a lot smaller than that one. And this one you have to work by hand, and that one is electrical. But all this beautiful design quality didn't stop on the exterior. Check this out. How beautiful is this car? Oh gosh, it's just incredible. You didn't have any rear headrests back in those days, but here for your arms to relax. And I tell you, sitting in the rear of this is just incredible. It's so special. Back in the days, we actually had ashtrays for the rear smokers. I don't know how you want to smoke. If that's your ashtray and you're driving, how did you want to, I suppose you could with the window open and then, you know, do your thing there. But nevertheless, working perfectly. Back there, the windows still going all the way down, as opposed to the ones that only go that far nowadays for kid safety. I can't tell you how effortless and smooth this is, how there are no points at which this actually gets stuck, where it's difficult, where it squeaks. Look at the amount of play on this. Look here. Nothing. Do you hear the cracks? You don't, because there aren't any. Wow, tremendous. And again, the sound. This car's front seat, at least the driver's one, has got a cover, but otherwise that's what they look like, with a beautiful pocket here at the back. Indentations, people. Indentations for the person sitting here to have their knees. Sorry for this rubbish. You can test it. There you go. Absolutely stunning. The quality that you see here is something otherworldly. Look at this. Beautiful. A very funky thing to realize. You see the headrest over here? And this button. Now if I pull this out, check this. And now look at that. Isn't that so funky? And I know that some of these also worked electrically, but this is so cool that you even have that in a car that is 35 years old. Really gorgeous. Let's hop over to the front seat. I have noticed that sometimes if I don't bang the door completely, you see it doesn't close perfectly. I have been told that after many years you might want to adjust these, which is also why they've got screws on them, and you can sort of see that the hinge is ever so slightly pressing on there, so I think there is some adjustment to be done, but apparently it's a tricky thing. Here you have the ability to raise your seat. It's a bit difficult if I'm not sitting on it. If I pull this lever, I can raise the entire seat or recline it to the bottom in case I'm taller and have big butt and legs. Here, this one, it tilts the front portion of your seat. It's lovely how it has the sort of tension on there and just rolls beautifully. Even when you're sitting on the chair, on the seat, it works beautifully to adjust that. I didn't put the carpets in there, but I did hear that apparently it's a pretty cool thing to have them. You can see the mileage testimony on this car, the pedals. It's also something if you're buying a car and you see it's got like 80,000 Ks on the clock and it's 50 years old and the pedals look like this, you know somebody's tampered with the speedometer. Here at the bottom, you've got the big orange lever. This is for opening the bonnet. This one over here is for the foot brake, which is over here. Yes, there is no handbrake to be seen. You see that? You do it with your foot. Mercedes-Benz. Your light switch for raising the headlights electronically in case you've got a lot of stuff in your boot like I do, or the other way around. And then you have your lights, which, funky, if you go here or here, you will activate your park lights on that side, either on the left or the right. This is in case you park somewhere where perhaps the car, especially like this being a black car at night, visibility might be slightly hindered and you don't want somebody to crash into your car, you can just do that, and I'll only put the park lights on that side of the car that is facing the street. Very, very thoughtful of Mercedes. And then we've got both park lights and of course the main beams. And if you pull it out, you activate the fog lights, which in Germany, by the way, if you do that in the city, it's punishable and you can get a fine, which I did because I forgot that. And in South Africa, if you have, the more lights you have in the front of your car that are on, the cooler you are. So, yeah. Right, as we said, here, there's beautiful little adjuster. Manual labor for that. And then over here, I've got the button for adjusting that electronically on that side. This here adjusts the sound system, the speakers playing towards the front of the car or more towards the rear, depending on probably who you want to have a conversation with. You got this beautiful wood look over here and all inside the car. Fantastic quality. Look at this, guys. This is 35 years old. The interior, 35 years old. And it's still looking so amazing. Let's take the camera off so I can point at things a little bit better. 35 years old. Fabulous. And things still work so well. One complaint that I have, that's my mess. One complaint that I have is really, this is about as close as you're going to get to cup holders, which, yeah, not so good, because you can't put something in there and drive. Otherwise, the Germans didn't have any cup holders at all. This here is, I think it's just the previous owner wanting to be cool, but it kind of looks funky. People think, wow, he drives an old Benz with a phone. Funky as heck, but that's fake. I kind of like it though. As we said, we've got a 4-speed manual gearbox over here. Reverse, you lift the lever and go up into reverse. So against the wall, lift it, and then up into reverse, and a normal first, second, third, and fourth. There's a beautiful clicky feeling towards the gears and popping back into neutral. The gear throws are extremely long, and so are the gear ratios as well. This only being a 4-speed. And if you look at the speedometer, just for a second, you see the little lines over there? That's the maximum you can do in first gear, second gear, and third gear. And the top speed of this car is actually 200 kilometers per hour. That's true speed. The speedometer will be somewhere around 210, which is crazy because it's a 4-speed, and you'll see just now when we go for a drive that the needle is right between 3,000 and 4,000 when you're up at about 120, 130, 140. 140 is 4,000 RPMs, but funny enough, once I went to 160 and it went to only 4,500 RPMs. I haven't gone faster with this car because, as you can see, 357,709 kilometers. Ooh, I have a lot of respect for that kind of mileage. Now, I'm showing you guys all of this because I honestly worried about that when I bought the car, or the first one. I'll talk about that later. This is your oil pressure, tank gauge, and then your engine temperature. Now, it's very normal to have the engine temperature just above 80 degrees, right? When the car gets hot, if it's in traffic and so on and so forth, don't be scared if the temperature needle goes up to nearly just under 120 degrees before the magnetic clutch of your fan actually kicks in. Now, there is a way to work around that, and perhaps we'll talk more about that when we actually do the rebuild of the car, because it's some of the stuff that I want to change before I head on to a long and hot desert drive, soft sand, high temperatures, perhaps not a lot of wind, or perhaps a lot of wind from the rear. You want to make sure that the car stays cool. And so there is a way to work around that. One of them is to build a a switch in. It's a sensor that basically triggers the magnetic clutch of the fan, and it'll do that at a lot lesser degrees, so earlier. And the other thing to do is to build in a what's the name? Oh gosh, what is the name? Oh yeah, a thermostat. A thermostat that does just kick in quicker as well, to allow the water to circulate through the entire circulation path of the engine and also the radiator before it just gets too hot, and that'll kick in early as well. I changed both of those in my previous Mercedes and I never had any cooling problems after that again. There is a third version we can talk about, but that's basically just putting an override switch in to trigger your magnetic clutch for the fan cooling the radiator, and that way you can just put that into manual mode and make it work. Now, lastly, here you've got the heating for the rear window. I don't know if you see there, the rear window. Oh yes, working with the Osmo Action 5 Pro. DJI, you rock. So that'll defrost your rear window. Here you've got the hazards, and this funky bugger is actually to switch the light for the readers, for the people who sit at the back, to switch that light on and off for them to read. I don't know why that switch isn't on the inside so that anybody can, on the back, so they can do that themselves. But nevertheless, here we've got our fan speeds. You can also switch it completely off. There is a level here in the middle as well. So it's kind of like a 0.5 version before you get to 1. And then here, very cool, you listen to this click. And also at the bottom. Now, when you go below this click, when it's cold, I think it actually closes it. Here it starts working the water circulation through the internal radiator here in the front. It's not a radiator, but it's the mechanism to also allow hot air to come into this car. And that I think is the maximum, obviously, but also pushes it to the window to defrost it. Now you've got, I think as far as I can judge, I can't say for sure, but it's like dual climate, because you can change this one's temperature for the passenger and this one stays the same for the driver. I think it's really funky. And here the same thing, defrosting the window, air going up and down to the feet and to the window, here just to the feet, and here is actually for the outlets over here. Now, I've been told by somebody that knows these Mercedes a bit better than me that the center ones give you fresh air always, whereas the one on the left and the right will actually give you the heated air that you put in here, because Mercedes does want you to have fresh air for driving. There we go. That's fantastic. This is such a crazy car. I love the steering wheel. You see, this is the version without the airbag, which you would have here in a sort of a bigger centerpiece in the facelift. And the ashtray over here, that's where you put your lighter thingy in. This is not the real radio. As a matter of fact, I think this is the real radio. The owner did give it to me. Here we go. That is what the original Becker Europe 2000 radio looked like. Maybe I should just stick this in. Or if anybody really is looking for a radio like this, you can contact me, let me know. I don't know if it works, but it should be working. I mean, it's quality from Mercedes-Benz. Right, another big thing to mention is the sunroof. I'm just gonna, not start, just put the ignition on and check this out. I purposefully didn't say anything because I want you to hear the sound of how amazing this is working even 35 years later. Listen again. Ladies and gentlemen, Mercedes-Benz quality. Wow. I really think this car just looks so stunning when you check the foot brake. Oh, wait. It looks so incredibly stunning when you actually see the roof pop out. Whoa, that is sexy. Such a beautiful, beautiful car. Look at this. 35 years, ladies and gentlemen. Right, so there we go. That's us for now. Now it's time for us to go and take a little drive. I'm very excited to actually take you guys out on a drive in this, just because it's such a phenomenal car to drive. The way that this is still working the way it does 35 years after it was built testifies to the beauty and the challenge accepted by the engineers back in the day. There's a beautiful line I read about the motto of the engineers back in the day. They said, quality over costs. Quality over costs. That's a line we should really get used to. Now, one thing I didn't mention to you, there is a weak spot in this car, and that is actually these B-pillars on the inside. The material kind of lets go a little bit. I don't know if you can see this. You see just the cover. It's like the glue just says adios. But you know what? I'm not to worry about that. Listen to this. 357,702 kilometers. This specific engine serviced at Mercedes-Benz up to 310,000 kilometers. Listen to this. This is with the sunroof open. Give it a couple of revs. It's nothing raucous. It's nothing raucous. And a couple of people have said to me, Bjorn, what is this? What is this? Because of the kind of cars that I normally drive, and for those of you who might not know, I do a lot of work for Porsche and for the company called Novitec. And Novitec specializes in optimizing and individualizing high-level tuning for supercars, especially the brands Lamborghini, McLaren, Ferrari, Rolls-Royce, to name a few. You can check out the Novitec Group YouTube channel over there. I'll put a link in somewhere. But for now, let's go for a beautiful cruise in this stunning, stunning, beautiful motor car. For a moment, let's keep quiet and just listen to this. That's where my fifth gear is missing. I'm on winter tires, which are noisier. I'm going to turn down there. Just listen to this. This car, in German you say, das Auto entschleunigt einem. Das Auto entschleunigt einem. The car decelerates you. It really does. You'd be very surprised how you can throw this Mercedes around, how capable it actually is 35 years later. But it doesn't elicit that feeling inside of you. As a matter of fact, getting out of 7, 8, 900 horsepower supercars, and getting into this and driving home it's perhaps even a bit more satisfying than getting into a supercar. A little bit more satisfying. Maybe you don't agree with me now. Maybe you said that you can't tell me that if I ever have the choice between an 812 Superfast or an F8 or 296 GTB or perhaps even the 12 Cilindri, that with the Novitec exhaust system, I'm going to willingly choose to drive a 35-year-old Mercedes. Yeah, I get how you're not believing me in that one, but I promise you, there is a difference between driving a supercar that is not yours and driving a 35-year-old Mercedes that is. Because, as we'll discuss later, if you do crash one of these, it's yours and you've lost $3,500 grand. If you make a mistake, even the slightest mistake with a supercar, it can be very unforgiving. And I'm talking once you've exerted the help that you get from Ferrari's multiple systems to keep you on the road and out of the trees. Once you've gone over the border there, you really need to be Chris Harris, because otherwise you're going to end up screwing not just the car, but also your reputation. And that's a burden that you're going to carry for the rest of your life. This is just majestic. My seating position towards the steering wheel, the length of my legs to the pedals, the way that this is so oversized and huge. Yeah, quite frankly, you feel like you're driving a big ship. And in a sense, perhaps you are. But you're driving so much more than that. You're driving heritage, and you're driving class, and you're driving very, very specific ingenuity. The guys went balls to the walls with this. To be honest, Mercedes said, guys, you've got free reign to the engineers back in the day, and that's when they came up with this quality over costs thing. And I totally get that. I totally love them for doing that, because 35 years later, you're still driving that. Now, so what have we got? Let's talk about literally on the spec side, how that translates into the drive, right? That 2.3 litre 4-cylinder is not overexerting itself. In the best of days, it's producing between 132, 136 horsepower, just under 200 Newton meters of torque, and it sends all of that via a 4-speed manual, 4-speed automatic, or a 5-speed manual gearbox to the rear differential. It's not the what, it is the how, people, because the class, the finesse, and the richness with which it's doing this, that's the point. That's what really counts. Even though there's not a lot of torque, I find under 200 for such a big engine to be rather shallow in that range, but it's more than enough for commuting, for cruising, and funny enough, more than enough actually when you're driving out on the highway. I have to be honest that I was terrified of the 4-speed gearbox, thinking that, oh gosh, it's gonna really run out of revs and I'm gonna sit in a noisy, screamy car. Absolutely wrong when it comes to that. This car is a gem. The gear ratios are extremely far apart, but the 5-speed would still be my choice. I did have one with a 5-speed gearbox, exactly the same car, and what happened to me and that car I will share with you guys a little bit later in this video. But the 5-speed gearbox was absolutely the shiz. It transformed the power and the comfort and the economy that you get from that 2.3 litre engine. This car looks very big. It looks like what probably the equivalent of a 5 Series or a A6 Audi, but really it's small, and you only realize that when you see it right next to something like a Golf 5 or a Golf 6, and you think, oh my word, that is so much bigger than this, and it really is. But I think cars nowadays are so bulgy and needs to appear masculine and strong and this and that Whereas here they just stuck to minimalism using great quality components, and subsequently you have a car that is less hassle, less bulk, but still gives you the same kind of quality and usability that you have in modern day cars. I think I did some research on the measurements, and they're very similar to what you actually get from some of these bigger cars. Well, it's smaller, this one, but when it comes to the internal measurements like the boot size and all that, it's very similar. This car, 1,740 centimeters wide, 5,740 centimeters long. I mean, it's not small, but it's not that large either. And for what you get, the usability, 5 people super comfortably, that boot is ginormous. It's absolutely riveting. It's super practical, and it doesn't steal the agility because listen to this, the weight. Now, a 5 Series BMW nowadays, if you look at an M5, and I know I'm grabbing over this side of the plate over here because it's taking an extremity, but an M5 Touring is going to weigh more than 2 tons. More than 2 tons. Do you know what some of these weigh, depending on whether you've got climate control and all that? The lighter versions of this, 1,190 kilograms, 1,200 kilograms. And that's not even dry weight. Can you believe it? It's incredible. That obviously contributes to the agility, to the driving finesse, and to the joy, which is holding on to this big old black steering wheel and just cruising through the landscapes. I'm doing a solid 80 kilometers per hour here, and I can have a great conversation with you guys and just thoroughly enjoy it. I think I'm going to pop in here and look at that maneuver. You'd think, holy cow, any other car would have gotten a little bit uncomfortable doing such a maneuver, and yet you'd be very surprised, because Mercedes-Benz has this beautiful ability to actually body roll to a certain extent, and you'd think, oh my gosh, anything further than that and I am so going to be into the vegetables. But it's not. It's just not. Once you get to that feeling of this is the limit, that's only Friday afternoon. You can really party all the way to Sunday then still. It's a tricky feeling. It's really odd to actually trust the system. But once you get there, you can really give it the beans, and it'll do it hands down. It's just incredible. I'm gonna go through here. I don't know. No, actually, this is wrong. Sorry, Betty. I'm gonna not go down there. Got a bit of a tricky lighting situation. I'm very curious to see how that 10-bit dynamic range of the DJI is going to deal with this, but it is what it is. So, funny enough, 0 to 100, 10 seconds. This is what Mercedes says, and it's roughly the same whether you've got the 4-speed or the 5-speed manual. The auto, I don't know, but I definitely think it's going to be slower. And really crazy is that both the 4 and the 5-speed has a true top speed of 200 kilometers per hour. I don't know if we're going to get to do a little bit of Autobahn driving. I'll do that in another video because I realize these are getting so long. But it's a joy on the Autobahn, and then you'll get to see the experience. It won't be a POV cranking the car, but it definitely will give you a good feel of what it can do. Fuel consumption, the 4-speed gearbox does make a considerable difference there to the 5-speed. They say 9.5 to 10.5 liters per 100 kilometers. I can tell you that 9 to 10 is what I get. And this is, you see how I'm driving this. So maybe this is slow, maybe it's normal, maybe it's fast for some of you. I don't know. You can let me know. But it's definitely more than enough. The 5-speed that I had before, and I'll tell you what happened there, but the 5-speed did give me sometimes even 8 to 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers, and that I think is very, very good. For a car this size and with this amount of luxury and not built for racing at all, I think that's absolutely fantastic. What we're going to do, I think I'll pull over somewhere. We'll swap the camera to a POV section so you can actually see the road and the driving, and then we'll talk about the rest of the car once we do that. You can enjoy the driving with me. As I said, this is the as-is situation, how I bought the car. I just changed the summer tires, put on the winter tires. I think I'm going to go down that road. And here's actually a beautiful little section to just put the camera on POV. So yeah, let's just use somebody's, that is a Mercedes in the garage. Look at that. Maybe they don't mind if I park here for a second. Right, let's do this. Let go of the handbrake. And here I really want you to see just how incredible the turning circle is of this car. For such a huge monster, it's just brilliant. There we go. Cute kids. Hey, hello buddy. It's amazing how, even though this car's old, sometimes kids still realize that it's something special because they tend to wave and all that. Do you mind if I pass? Thanks, champ. No worries. I was once in Dresden in East Germany, and this little kid on a bicycle just screamed at me. He was like, "Hey, cool car, man!" Obviously in German, but oh wow, look at this, we got to a really cool road. We're gonna head that way. There you go. Second gear. She's old, but she's not gold. In Afrikaans sê ons oud maar nie koud nie. Beautiful. Just how the engine still pulls so effortlessly and so smoothly. 357,000 kilometers. Accolades to Mercedes for creating such indestructible engines. Mercedes has put extreme efforts in engineering also into long-lasting components. For example, the seats as well. I know you get some terrible examples. Oh, beautiful old Porsche. You get some rough examples of the seats, but it really depends on how the car's been treated throughout its life. But the seat quality and the springs and the comfort that it still offers me is exceptional for 35 years old. I've driven this car for about 500 kilometers in one go, and still it was just incredible. It was very restful. It's not an effortful car to drive, if there's a word as such. It's not strenuous to drive. You see how I tend to just touch the wheel here and there, even do a one-hand drive. You will probably look long and hard to find a car in this age for this amount of money that's going to give you this kind of quality. Now, a part of that is also the suspension setup. You've got McPherson struts in the front and independent suspension in the front and also in the rear. In the rear, the very famous Mercedes multi-link system, which I think sort of did its debut in this car, in this size, in that era, if I'm not mistaken. And the multi-link suspension is just incredible. You don't have a solid differential going straight through like a ball-headed diff, so to say. It's all independent with independent drive shafts and the multi-link doing its thing. Incredible driving feel, to be honest with you. Then the front is also independent, obviously, but it's got coil springs, and there is an anti-roll bar, and I do feel that it's probably part of the sort of, I'm going to call it the nip and tuck feel, when you do give this car the beans on curvy roads and you feel like it's probably going to end up understeering at some stage. and really it doesn't. It just induces so much trust once you're willing to expand on the speed area. It's so good. Now look at this. This is just second gear, carrying on driving. That's what I mean, that there is quite a bit of a torquey feel, even though it's only a 2.3 and we've got less than 200 Newton meters. And I don't think you can see the rev counter, but I'm basically, when I'm short shifting like this, I'm driving under 2,000 RPMs. Under 2,000 RPMs, you can see that I'm completely flowing in traffic. I'm not suffocating the car and overexerting it by giving it too much gas on low RPMs. There's no point to do that. There is enough torque and enough power in this. I actually think that it's the perfect blend for this engine. When it comes to a 4-cylinder and just how flexible it is, that's great. Sorry, 1990, a big 4-door sedan, 0 to 100 in 10 seconds flat, that's good. You won't get spontaneous and exciting acceleration moments where it's going to press you into your seat. It's more of a linear, gradual occasion, and for that, it's just all the more classy. So let's get to the story of why I'm referring to my previous model. Perhaps also under the segment of safety, because these cars introduced a whole new design of crumble zones. It's incredibly safe. 124, 126, incredibly safe cars. They poured in a lot of engineering and intelligence into how to make this car safe. I had exactly this car. This is the sad part of the story. I had exactly this car before, 1990 model, all exactly the same. And the rally that I'm going on next year, there was a rally like that this year. And unfortunately, after rebuilding my Mercedes and everything being perfect and it proving itself to be an absolute gem for what I wanted to do with it, we did manage to lose control of the car on a very tight bend on a mountain pass. And we shot over the edge, down the mountain, landed on big rocks, and then stopped with the help of a big oak tree. And it hit the front of the car. Through the rocks, the front suspension was moved back about 30 centimeters. Both front tires, the whole front suspension was pressed into the rims were bent. It was sitting right behind the car. I'll put in some pictures now. You can see just what a massive knock that was. I think by the time we hit the tree, by the time we went off the road, flying for a couple of meters, we probably had the best part of 45 kilometers per hour on the clock, which isn't a lot, but it was a really tight gravel road. And what happened is that we were flowing nicely on that road. We were doing higher speeds. And at some stage I braked in front of the corner and the ABS just immediately started grabbing. And I realized that the texture of the road at that point in time, the loose gravel, was nothing that I was able to anticipate before. And I was too fast at that point in time to actually deal with the loose gravel. The weight of the car and the speed just couldn't make the corner. We did try, but eventually we ran out of the road and it just went over the edge and down a mountain. We had to switch off the engine because it was still running, even though that was how hard we hit the car and the road and the trees. And we were able to open both doors, get out, and walk away without as much as a scratch. That is how incredible this car is built. I gained so much respect for Mercedes after that situation. The car did phenomenal, even for its age, even though that model did have a little bit of rust here and there, but the crumble zones just work immensely well. And as I said, with such an impact, to be able to open up the doors still and get out and walk away without as much as a scratch or a blue mark is something that I will be thankful to Mercedes for, and to God, for my whole life. I came back riveted that I had lost my first love, my first W124, that had successfully been transformed into that car that I wanted to take across the Moroccan desert. And I decided to go on a hunt for the next one, which is when I found this. And she's got 100,000 kilometers more on the clock, which is extreme. But I put my money on the quality of this car. And I know that there's been many that have done many, many more miles than mine. And so I'm just gonna put my bucks on the fact that this car was serviced at Mercedes-Benz up to 310,000 of the 357. And after that, invoices for every service at a different garage. So much has been done, and I believe this car is going to carry us through. And I think at this point it's probably a good place to just end our video. Let me just pull in here somewhere, see if we don't have a little spot just to pull over and just to have a quick final look at the car before I end this video with you. There we go. Just look at her. Him, it, Opa Gerhard. Stunning. What a beautiful car. Timeless, gorgeous. Engineering worth celebrating, worth investing in, worth grabbing onto. And knowing that this car will actually do the trip. It'll do that trip across the Saharan desert, dunes and mountain passes and gravel roads, all of that effortlessly, just because it is a Mercedes-Benz, a 230e, an over-engineered masterpiece. This is what motoring really is about. It's been real, guys. Thank you so much for joining me in this very first video. I spent my whole life making videos for other people, for Porsche, for Novitec, and I absolutely love it. I wouldn't want to change a thing, but I wanted to start sharing my own passion with own projects. That's why we're going head first into it, just vlog style. Please leave some comments down in the bottom. What you think about it, about the process, about the project. Also, any tips on this car that you have for me, write them down in the comments. I'm going to be reading the comments, maybe even answering on some of them in a separate video. I'd love to hear any tips that you can give. If you can subscribe, if you want to see more content like this, that would be really cool. It'll help me. And other than that, I'll see you guys in some other videos. Remember, pop over to the Novitec group if you want to check that out. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for joining and coming along with the ride. And also give me some feedback on the video. That would be cool. Help me out. Cheers.